This channel is for educational purposes only. Make sure you do your own due diligence before making any investments. And there is inherent risk in trading, so it's speculative. Just make sure you keep that in mind. Hi, this is Joe. We're going to talk about ADX today. I have been out on YouTube just checking out some of the other videos out there by the so-called gurus, I guess you'd call them. I'm a little concerned, and I want to make sure anyone who's interested in learning ADX, I definitely recommend you go back to my original videos go back through all the way from the beginning. I've only been doing this for a year. There's not that many of them, but probably 5 or 10 of them. Make sure you understand an indicator before you consider putting any trades on based on it. It's an incredibly powerful tool, but based on what I'm seeing out there, they're teaching just the wrong aspects. I don't know exactly how they're coming up with this, but you need to understand a few details, and I'm going to go into a few details, and then if you stick around to the end, I am going to show you a specific idea that I think looks somewhat attractive based on the ADX and the way that I use it. So let's go ahead and get into this. The chart I'm going to use is Alcoa. And, I actually talk about this in a few other videos with MACD. I've got the weekly on the left and the daily on the right. And so one of the things I just want to make sure is understood, and maybe you guys understand this if you've been watching my videos, I think you should understand it, but it's always, I think it's, the way I'm going to describe it today, I think is going to leave no room for doubt. I think you're going to have a much better idea. So let me just do this. I'm going to punch this in. And so we're going to start here on the left. And I'm saying NEG because what I'm trying to point out is every single time this blue line rallies up, so here's the 25 line going across, okay? And every single time this blue line, which is the ADX line, rallies up and shows strength. And at this point, the ADX is at 43. So that's a pretty strong reading at that peak right there. And then it pulls back, and then it goes again, and it has another 44 reading that time. And then this reading is about 44 as well. So you got 3 peaks around 44, and then this peak here, again on the blue line, is around 48. So these are really strong characteristics of ADX, where ADX is rallying to a pretty high level. As I have said in the past, I want to see it above 25, but the reality is I kind of like to see it above 30 when it peaks up there. I like to see it get through 30, but the minimum requirement would be 25. So all of these are very, very strong peaks. What I'm pointing out here with the NEG is saying these are all negative peaks. They're all based on the fact that the red DI is on top and above 25, and that's what's causing the ADX line to go up. Remember how this is calculated. Red DI or green DI, depending on which is on top, it doesn't matter. It's the difference between these two lines. So if red is on top and the difference is significant, you're going to have a really strong blue line. And if the green line is on top, and red is way down here, but there's a big difference between the two, the blue line is still going to be going up. So just because the line is rising doesn't mean the market is going up or a stock is going up or that it's bullish. You have to have this clear in your head. It's the one thing about ADX that is a little confusing, but once you understand this, you realize the power behind it. And so every one of these peaks on this weekly chart, other than this one here. So if you look at this peak here, this little peak got up to 31. And if you notice, it was based on the green DI. So when this peaked up, it ran down to 25, and then it peaked up around 31, 32. It was because green was above red, and there's a difference between the two. So as long as that is the case, the blue line doesn't care. The ADX line does not care whether green is on top or whether red is on top. And when I say green, I'm talking about the buyers, and when I say red, I'm talking about the sellers. That's what's represented. You've got 3 different lines taking place. So if we go over to the right chart on a daily basis, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put pause here. And the reason why I'm going to say that, and just ignore it on this time frame, but if you look at it here, you've made a really strong peak. This peak was, it got up to 48.5. It's very strong ADX reading. And it was based on the fact that the green was significantly above the red. So this is based on buyers, okay? And then we had another peak here around 38, and then another peak here around 51, and then actually kind of a little double topish around 51, 50, 51. And then we're actually making another peak right now that's based on the negative. But all of these other peaks, this peak, this peak, this peak, and this peak are all based on the positives. So if I'm looking at these two charts, I can see on the left side I've got a negative peaks going nuts. This is a really strong bearish trend to the downside based on the ADX peaks. Every single time ADX makes a new peak in its trend, or makes a peak above 25 while the price is making new lows, it's confirming the downtrend. And then every time the ADX is making new highs or peaks above 25 when price is making new highs, is confirming the uptrend. And again, if we sort out the peaks, so you just want to make sure you know if a ADX line is making a nice move to the upside, and that's the blue line, then you want to make sure that it's based on the buyers and not the sellers. So anyway, I hope this makes sense, but when you go and look at some of these other videos, I'm telling you, if you look at the videos that I've posted over the last 6 months, 9 months on ADX, you are going to know more than the majority of the people on the YouTube. I mean, the guys that are claiming that they know what they're talking about on YouTube, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's a few out there that I haven't found, but the ones that I'm seeing, it seriously concerned me when I looked at it this week. So I want to make sure you understand that. Let's go and look at MXIM. Now, we're going to go through the same process here. If you notice, you have a negative peak here. Well, first, let's go back a little further. So if you look at the peak here, this is a really strong positive peak going up into a top for this move. Now, the one thing you have to keep in mind, when you get these price spikes like that, it has a big influence on ADX, right? Because the DI line is making a big spike, and you have to go 13, in this case, 13 weeks have to go by before you get rid of this line. So it's having a very positive influence on that. So I want to make sure that was clear. And it's also real important as to the reason why I use MACD as well, because sometimes you'll get bad readings or even bad quotes, and it'll really screw up the ADX for a little while. So if we look at this next peak though, so then from that period you dropped, and you notice the ADX was, a decent reading. It got up to 33, but it was a lot less than the positive peak. And then we rallied up, but this is a lot of volatility kind of taking place, and ADX is moving sideways, and then we got a negative reading here on the big collapse earlier this year. It got up to 31. And now look at what's happening. So that, again, that peak is based on the negative price action, the decline. You see how the red is above the green? And now what's taking place is we have this really strong upside reading, and it's based on the green, the difference between the green and the red, where green is on top. And you notice the blue line went to a new high versus that negative. So this, to me, is a positive peak greater than the last negative peak. I view that as a big positive. If we go and look at what's taken place, so price has gone through, I would consider to be like an ABC correction. You drop down here, then you rallied up, and that's B, and now you've made a C. So I'm not an Elliott wave guy, but I can count to 3. I can do the ABC thing, and I can see the ABCs pretty clearly. And if you notice what took place during that ABC, you had the move down and then the rally up, and then look at how weak the sellers are. I mean, so price is going to a lower low here, and ADX can't get, the red line can't even break out. You can't get the blue line above 25. So this is showing this whole area here is incredibly weak when it comes to the sellers. There's no real strength in the sellers whatsoever. So when I see that, I'm willing to be a little bit more aggressive. I'm of the opinion that, the bias is to the upside. And, we've got a pretty good chance that we're going to see continuation to the upside. There you can go use your different indicators, go to your MACD. You can go to the failure at the 40. So this is a sell signal that fails. You can use your, again, your MACD crossover. You could use the 1, 2, 3 change in trend. If you make it more aggressive, you could do that. So there's a lot of different ways to enter the pattern, but I want to make sure you understand what the ADX is telling you here: strength on the buy side and then weakness on the correction. And again, if you learn these two things, you're going to start picking off the right stocks. So the whole idea is when you run a screen, you might have 50 stocks. You need to narrow it down. I'm telling you how to do that. Use ADX to do that, and it's a very powerful tool. Hit that like button, and we'll talk to you soon.